day dawning, and how the Bible itself tells us all when a day ends and when a new day starts. I know there's, oh, it starts at evening, it starts in the morning. Well, these scriptures here show you that it starts in the morning, not in the evening. Um, there are scriptures that make it appear that it starts in the evening, but when you take everything into context, you can refute those evening starting points with just a couple of scriptures that to prove a day couldn't change from one day to the next in the evening. Um, and I'll point that out as I go through here. This won't be very long. There is a lot. I just chose the scriptures that I liked, the scriptures that I found to be the hardest to debunk, to say that that's not what it means. That could mean anything. It's not really telling you when a day starts. So those are the ones I went with. So first here is Genesis, right? You get, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. All right, so darkness was upon the face of the deep. Darkness, evil, darkness, no light. God is light, so there's light wherever he goes, right? So we don't want to assume that it's pitch black and he's looking around and can't see anything. Okay, it's saying darkness was on the face of the deep. Nothing. It was void. So some will say he started, because there's a pattern. He started his day in darkness. So the pattern goes dark light, dark light. We're going to show that that's not accurate. So God says, let there be light, and there was light. Now the sun and moon weren't made for days later, so this light was Yeshua, the Messiah. Right? And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And that word, darkness, in the concordance. Actually, let's see if this is the right word. Right. Koshek. Koshek is the word that's used there in that verse. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament, and the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the... What, did I skip a bunch? Yeah, I skipped a bunch. He just... And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. All right, I'm just going to go into the concordance here really quick. All right, so what this is telling you is, and there was evening, and there were evening and the morning the first day. People will tell you that is the pattern. God's telling us the pattern, that the first day was evening and morning, but that doesn't make any sense, because what they're trying to say is that a day is evening to evening, but they're using evening to morning to say that that's a full day. And it had me for a bit, right? It did. It had me for a bit, and then I'm like, wait, evening at 8:30, 7, 9, whatever, depending on the season, till 6, 7 in the morning does never make up any type of day. That's just, that evening to morning defines night. It defines the nighttime. That's really what it does. And morning to evening defines daytime. So what's God telling us here? Well, it's just a recount of day one. I came, I made light, I saw it was good. Evening came, morning came. Now, they'll say, no, it's telling you that dark night is the pattern. That's why it says evening and morning. Well, the word here that we used a minute ago, koresh, was for darkness, right? So it's not that, because the word that they're using here for evening is areb. And the word night, right above the few words before it, is lael. So when they're saying evening, they mean evening. They don't mean dark, because it's saying it's evening time. So it's not the pattern. It's just telling you, I got there, I made the light, I saw it was good, evening comes, morning comes. And now the next thing that happens in the next verse is verse 6. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And if you jump to verse 8, it says, God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Now, if we were to follow the pattern of evening and evening, verse 5 says, in the evening and morning were the first day, and then God starts, he makes the firmament. Is he making that at night? Is he making it in the evening? No, he's making it in the morning, because it says evening and morning were the first day. So if you take that, he works evening, morning. Now he's making the firmament. It goes around evening, morning, and it just goes like that. It goes like that. He's just telling you, he's recapping what he did for the day. I woke up, I ate breakfast, I had lunch, worked until 5 o'clock, didn't really do much. Then evening came, I didn't do much at all, and then then the morning came. Boom, starting over again. That's the pattern. There is no pattern that you're going to find of darkness doing a bunch of stuff, morning, afternoon, and then the stuff ends. The pattern's always morning comes, all this stuff happens, and then nighttime comes. Morning comes, all this stuff happens. So all through Genesis 1, God's telling you what he did when he, quote unquote, woke up on that day, did his stuff, and then how the day concludes. That's why you hear, and the evening and the morning were the second day. In verse 9, and God said, let the waters under the heaven. When did he say that? In the morning, because it's the last thing he says in the verse before. So that's the Genesis account. He's telling you from A to Z what happened in an entire day, not evening and morning making up the day, because that would make no sense. Evening and morning is just defining night, evening to morning. So take a good look at that. Read it over and over, and you'll see it. He's just saying, I made the firmament, then evening came, and morning came. Boom. And now I made the waters, and evening comes, and morning comes. And that's how that goes. And this next one, I'm just going to jump, because this is one of the ones, because you can look at this and go, well, I still think he came and it was dark out, and then he made light, then worked. So it's really dark, then light. I don't see it. I tried to see it. I wouldn't even have brought it up, but it's clear that he's showing us how a day ends, and then it begins and it ends again. There is no pattern here of darkness, then light, darkness, then light. As each day begins, he's doing something in the light. He's of light. So if we jump to the New Testament and go to Mark 4, verse 35, I'll start at verse 4 just so there's a little bit of context here. Verse 33, Mark 4:33, and with many such parables spoke he the word unto them, as they were able to hear it. But without a parable spake he not unto them. And when they were alone, he expounded all things to his disciples. And the same day, so the same day he's doing these parables, when evening was come, he saith unto them, let us pass over to the other side. With evening to evening, that verse is impossible. It would never be the same day at evening. Why? Because they say the day goes from evening to evening. So this would say the next day. The next day when evening had come. Or evening come and the day changed, something. But it can never be it can't be the same day that he was speaking these parables and have it be evening time. That wouldn't work. That just wouldn't work. It would be a new day, or the beginning of a new day. Anything you would want to say, but never the same. Nope, that day would be over. Evening came, that day's over, we're done. This shows you right here that a day, the only way this verse works is morning to morning. Why was it the same day at evening? Because the day's not going to change until the following morning. You have an end of one day and the start of another at the same time. Jump back to the Old Testament. Exodus 12, verse, this is about the Passover. This is another really, really good example. I'll start off on verse 1. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month shall you take a month. In the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. So everyone has to take the lamb on the same time, if you're picking up on what that means. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep and from the goats. And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation shall kill it in the evening. So how could you kill your lamb in the evening on the 14th if on the evening of the 14th it becomes the 15th? Same thing that we read in Mark 4 verse 35. You can't. It would have to say the 15th. You wouldn't. The 14th at evening would have been the 13th. It doesn't, because they're doing this all day long. So once the 14th at evening comes, it'd be the 15th. And then if we go to verse 51, all the way down here. So this whole chapter in Exodus is talking about the Passover. So actually, I don't want to go to verse 51 right off the bat, but because there is a spot on here in this chapter. So, okay, right. So at midnight, when this goes down, the angel of death comes and kills all the firstborn, anyone that didn't have the blood on the lamppost, the firstborn of the animals and all that, at midnight. So we know that they had the Passover on the 14th at evening, right? They ate it with haste. At midnight, they come out. The angel of death comes. They come out. Pharaoh says, get out of here in verse 30. Take your stuff and go. Take your flocks and your herds. In verse 34, so people take their dough and it was unleavened. And then on verse 35, the people take the jewels and silver and gold from the Egyptians, just like was prophesied they'd do. They'd leave with all their goods. They'd spoil them, right? So we're saying all these things are happening. All these things are happening. And now I'm going to go down to verse 51. And it says, and it came to pass the self-same day. What self-same day? The day of the Passover, the 14th of the month. This whole chapter is talking about the 14th of the month. So the self-same day here is the 14th. And it came to pass in the self-same day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. When did he bring them out? Sometime after midnight. Self-same day. What day was it? When did this whole thing start? This whole thing started at the 14th on evening when they slaughtered the sheep and then ate it. Now, they had to eat the lamb on the 14th. How could they slaughter all these sheep, cook them, prepare them, and eat them before it changed to the 15th if you're telling me it goes evening to evening and the day would have changes on the 14th at evening? They'd be eaten on the 15th. And they had to burn everything by morning. Why? Because that's when the day changed. So this here, self-same day of the 14th, they had their Passover, the children died, they took their unleavened bread, they took the gold and silver from everybody, and they exited Egypt on the self-same day of the 14th, right there in Exodus 12. Let's do Leviticus 7. Now this is a good one. Here's another one that I can't understand. So this is a Thanksgiving offering, right? If you're just going to do a Thanksgiving offering to the Lord, verse 12 gives you all the stuff you have to do, cakes and oil, and verse 14, and of it he shall offer one out of the whole oblation for a heave offering unto the Lord, and it shall be the priest that sprinkle the blood of the peace offerings, right? Verse 15 is a kicker. And the flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offerings for Thanksgiving shall be eaten the same day that it's offered. So whatever day you offer this, you have up until the point that day ends to eat it. And he's going to tell you when that day ends by telling us how long we have to eat it. And on the morrow, am I reading the right verse here? Leviticus 7:15. Oh, no, I went to 16. He shall be eating it the self same day that it is offered. He shall not leave any of it until the morning. Well, bingo, right there, man. He's saying you got to eat it the same day and you have until morning. You can't leave it until the morning. So if the day changed at evening, telling us you have to eat it the same day, but you can't leave any until the morning, that be the instructions wouldn't be clear, because you're going to have some people, if evening came at 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock and you eat this at 10:30, it's not morning yet, so you're not breaking these rules, but it's not the self same day. So the only way that you could eat this sacrifice the same day that it's eating, that it's offered, and have until morning to do it, would be a day going morning from morning, not evening to evening. Otherwise, this would say you only have until evening to eat it. Because I could wake up at even morning doesn't come until, depending where you are in the world, even right now. Right now in Israel, right, where these people were, it's 6:30, about 6:30 in the morning, the sun rises, which would be morning. You could eat this thing at 3 and to be the same day. So these instructions would be misleading if the day changed at evening. You got to eat it the same day that it's offered. There's no way you can have until morning to do that. All right, Exodus, we'll jump to that. 16. Verse 8 is what I have, and I'll read this. And Moses, excuse me. And Moses said, "This shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, in the morning bread to the full." So flesh came in the evening, and in the morning came the bread, the manna. "For that the Lord heareth your murmurings, which you murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord." All right, so this happened all the time. The Sabbath. If the Sabbath started at evening, how could this flesh come at evening? They pull the feathers out of this whole thing and prepare it and eat it before the next day comes. They couldn't do it. I got what I have for little notes here as I was studying this. If the flesh comes at evening, how could they prepare it before the Sabbath starts at evening, which is the same time? The manna came each day in the morning, which tells us this in verse 23. And he said to them, "This is which the Lord has said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye shall bake today, and seethe that which ye shall seethe, and which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning." He's telling them to get twice as much, right? He's telling them to get twice as much. Why would they lay it up till the morning? If the day changed at evening and the Sabbath started, why did they have to wait until morning? They gathered twice as much Friday morning. So they ate their Friday portion. Why are they being told to hold their Sabbath portion until the morning? Because the day changes in the morning, and that's when it becomes a Sabbath. You're not going to find scriptures of people keeping the Sabbath at night. And it's not. I haven't come across any. Let me say that. Yah has not showed me any verses in here where someone's keeping the Sabbath at night and following the Sabbath rules. It's always in the daytime. Always is. So in verse 24, and they laid it up until morning. So they lay this all up until the morning time, because that's when the Sabbath started. Otherwise, they could have started eating their Sabbath portion Friday evening that they collected twice as much. I hope that makes sense, right? Because you can't give them the flesh at evening time and then say, "Hey, you better get it ready," because it's preparation day for another 5 seconds. It can't happen at the same time. And they're getting 2 of these in the morning time, and he wouldn't say hold it up until the morning. Also, if you go through this, read Exodus 16. There's a lot more in here. I just grabbed some of the big ones. He tells them not to leave anything until morning. On the normal week, says it'll rot. They're supposed to it says gather what you need for that day, and then if you lay any up to morning, it'll rot and turn to worms. Why? Why the morning? Because he says gather what you need for that day. If they gathered too much and tried to save it, it would spoil at evening, because that's when the day changes. But no, it didn't. It was morning. We have a morning change, a change of events. Something happens the next day, and it happens in the morning. So we're defining it here again. When they had to gather enough for each day, they weren't supposed to keep any till the next day. When they kept it, when did something take place? When did it rot? In the morning, not at the evening. Here's another good one, Nehemiah. Nehemiah 13. Now this one is used to show that the Sabbath starts at evening, but I do not see that here. So let me read the scripture. Nehemiah 13, verse 19. Now this had to do with the Sabbath being broken. Merchants were coming in, the people were buying and selling on the Sabbath day, and Nehemiah, these guys have had enough. All right. So verse 19, they're going to stop this. I'll read 17. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah and said unto them, what evil thing is this that you do and profane the Sabbath day? Not night, the Sabbath day. Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us, upon the city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath? Yeah, we could say this to ourselves because he's telling them, didn't our fathers do this? And look at all the evil they got. Didn't you learn the lesson from their example? Yeah, people, it happens over and over and over again. Can't we learn from others' mistakes? Why would we see people punished over and over and over for not obeying the Sabbath and think, no, we don't have to because Messiah is the Sabbath. Messiah somehow became the do not work, do not buy, do not sell on the seventh day. He became the sanctified seventh day. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He's Lord over the Sabbath. He's not the Sabbath. So verse 19, and it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates that there should be no burden brought in on the Sabbath day, not the Sabbath night. And I'm saying this because people will take verse 19 and say, see, he wanted the gates closed before the Sabbath started, so they closed the gates right before dark, at evening. No, he doesn't say that. He wanted the gates closed so no one could get in on the Sabbath, and they close it at dark before the Sabbath. If the Sabbath started at 6:30 Saturday morning, you close your gates at 5 o'clock on Friday, it's still before the Sabbath. It doesn't say this, the Sabbath was about to start, so they shut the gates. He also ends the verse by saying he didn't want anything brought in on the Sabbath day. Now let's think about this. If the intent was these guys were going to come and start selling stuff Friday evening, which then would have become the Sabbath, why would he close the gates 2 minutes before the Sabbath starts? These guys would have come in all day long, and now you're going to close them in? Because these guys wouldn't have showed up, at the time they were supposed to sell stuff. They're going to show up beforehand. If you're going to come set up shop, it's not like now you walk into your place and flip a switch. These guys were clearly coming in. They had camels or whatever pulling their carts. They had to set up all their stuff, do all these things, right? Are they going to do this at the time when they're supposed to be sleeping? No. They were coming the night before so they could be in the city and sleep like people do at night. Not many people are going out at midnight to the market. They're going to sleep all night long and wake up and be there and set up shop. How do we know this? So the merchants in verse 20, so the merchants and sellers of all kinds were lodged out without Jerusalem. And then I testified against them and said unto them, why you lodge about the wall? If you do it again, I will lay my hands on you. From that time forth, they came no more on the Sabbath. They were coming there all night. They were waiting at the gate because the intent was to sell the next day. This guy knew that they were piling in through Friday night. So when they woke up Saturday on the Sabbath day, like he says, they were there selling stuff. So he was smart. He shut them out the night before. So he had them close the gates Friday night so that they couldn't even come in. So on the Sabbath day, there was no one to kick out and yell at. They couldn't even get there. It was a great, great plan. So this shows, again, morning to morning. He was preventing these people from being there. So when the morning came and the Sabbath started, there would be no merchants because they were going to come with their stuff, spend the night, and wake up in the morning. They weren't going to come and sell all night long. So he did good. He closed the gates at the time he knew they were coming. He didn't close the gates because the Sabbath was about to start. Matthew 28:1. So this is a good one. In the end of the Sabbath, right? As it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. I don't really have to comment on that. In the end. So the Sabbath hasn't ended, it's the end of, and it's beginning to dawn on Sunday. You couldn't have this verse if the Sabbath ended at evening on Saturday. Couldn't do it. Because this would say, it wouldn't even mention the Sabbath, right? It would just say as the sun was beginning to come up on the first day of the week. But they clearly put this in here, in the end of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is ending. It's beginning to dawn toward the first day of the week. The first day of the week is starting right here in this verse. And side note, we can clearly see that it's not the first day of the week yet. Mary shows up and she's looking for him, and the angel says in verse 6, he's not here, he's risen. He's already gone. Couldn't have risen on Sunday. Couldn't have done it. But that's another story. That's another thing to think about. Really think about that. It's not Sunday and he's gone. So he had to have risen before Sunday. So I just celebrated the resurrection day and claimed Sunday the day he was risen, but he was gone Sunday. Yeah, you know why? He's the Lord of the Sabbath. He's not the Lord of Sunday. Acts 20, verse 7. All right. And upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, which they could have broke bread every day. It doesn't say, because I'm sorry, people will use this verse to say that the Sabbath was changed to Sunday because these guys came together to break bread on the first day of the week. This is just telling us where the story starts. It's not telling us that the Sabbath is Sunday now. It's the first day of the week. They came together to break bread. Sure, they ate every day. Paul preached unto them, ready to depart. Check this out. He was ready to depart on the morrow. Concordance for the morrow. When was Paul ready to depart? Morrow? The next day. Morrow, next. Day following, day after. All right, so we got that clear. Paul was ready to leave the next day, not this day. He was going to leave, if this is the first day of the week, Paul was going to leave on the second day of the week. So, Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and he continued his speech until midnight. Why didn't he leave at evening? He was going to leave the next day. What? Okay, well, midnight would still be the next day, right? Well, let's see. And there were many lights in the upper chamber where they were gathered together. And there sat in the window a certain young man named Eutychus, being fallen asleep into a deep sleep. And as Paul was long preaching, he sunk down with sleep and fell down the third loft and was taken up dead. And Paul went down and fell on him and embraced him, and said, trouble not yourselves, for his life is in him. When he therefore was come up again, and had broken bread, and eaten, and talked a long while, even till the break of day, then he departed. Wow. So Paul said, this starts off by saying it's the first day of the week. Paul was going to leave on the morrow, which we looked at the concordance is the next day. When does Paul leave? He talks all night long. This guy falls and dies. He brings him, helps him out, brings him back to life, eats more bread. Day breaks, he takes off. Why? Because he told us he had to leave the next day. So the moment the next day starts, Paul's out of there. This in no way, shape, or form can ever prove an evening to evening, because it just can't. He said he had to leave on the next day. He didn't leave that evening. Doesn't mention that he's late because of this kid fell, that it held him up on his trip. No, he kept his word. Day breaks, he takes off. More in the morning. Jumping back to the Old Testament. Exodus 29, verse 39. Is that really what I want here? Oh, cool. I don't know why. I gotta start At verse 37, 7 days shalt thou make atonement for the altar and sanctify it, and it shall be an altar most holy. Whatsoever touches the altar shall be holy. Now this is that which thou shalt offer upon the altar: 2 lambs of the first year, day by day, continually. So there had to be 2 offerings each day. The 1 lamb thou shalt offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at evening. Right? So they wake up, the day starts, they offer a lamb, and at evening, they offer another lamb. They don't offer the lamb at the evening and then the morning. They offer the lamb in the morning and in the evening, because that's when the new day starts. They had to do this every day. So with this pattern here, so every day you're offering the lamb, right? You're doing it in the morning. He's saying here the first one's in the morning, the second one's in the evening. Well, the first one's going to tell you when the day starts, because you're going to start your day with the first offering. If the day was evening to evening, you would start, as evening comes, you would do that next day's offering. So that's another one. Just by showing when they had to do the sacrifices day by day. When did it start? Morning. You offer the first lamb in the morning, the other one at evening. You go to sleep, you wake up, new day, start all over again. Oh, and by the way, if they offered one in the morning and the next one in the evening, according to evening, they would have broken this rule where there was 2 to be sacrificed the same day. Why? Because what happens when evening comes? If the day's evening to evening, it's the next day. So they would have messed up. This would have to say offer one in the morning and the next one prior to evening. So there's another proof that if it was evening to evening and they offered one in the morning and one at evening, they didn't fulfill this 2 lambs day by day. They wouldn't have done it. So there's another proof, and that I just picked up on that now. One Samuel, chapter 20, verse 5. And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the 3rd day at evening. What do I have here for notes? Well, the 3rd day at evening would turn into the 4th day, because if the evening changes the day, right? And so here we see later when you read that Jonathan does come back at evening on the 3rd day, but it would have been the 4th day from the time they spoke. It can't be the 3rd day at evening, because evening changes the day, right? No. Why would you even be able to say that? He would just say when the 4th day starts. Come when the 4th day starts. If it was evening to evening, like everyone tells us it is, they would know exactly what that means. Oh, 4th day at evening? I mean, the 4th, right when the 4th day starts? Oh, it's evening. I know that the day changes at evening. It's all they'd have to say. We get too much in our heads. He wouldn't have to explain it more than that. If a day was evening to evening and I told you to show up the minute the 4th day started, you're coming at evening. He doesn't say that. He says come the 3rd day at evening. Why? Because the 3rd day started in the morning, and evening is still part of the 3rd day. It's not changing the next day. John 20:19. It's another good one. So, Mary goes to the tomb. He's not there. She runs back to the house. She tells everybody. He shows up, right? And he's saying, verse 17, Yeshua says to her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father. And then Mary Magdalene, verse 18, came and told the disciples that she had seen him. And now, we just read it earlier. When does Mary show up? In the morning on the 1st day. In the morning, she shows up before it's the 1st day, actually. Now, let's check this out. Then the same day at evening, being the 1st day of the week. Hold on. wait a minute. Mary shows up on as the sun's coming up on the first day. It's evening, and they say it's the same day, and then they even define it. It's still the first day of the week. Impossible with evening to evening. Why? Because at evening it would be the second day now, the very beginning of the second day. Can't have it. I mean, this one verse, you can't use evening to evening with it. I mean, I suppose somebody could just say, that's not what they mean. It's, nope. Can't be the same day, because we know when this day started, it was dawning on it when Mary went to the tomb. And now it's still this first day of the week, but it's evening. They can't change and still say the same. You see the pattern here? I hope you see the pattern here. Lamentations, going back to the Old Testament, because there's no difference. The New Testament just expounds on the Old Testament teachings. That's all it does. And it shows us how many of the Old Testament prophecies were fulfilled by the Messiah. Not changed, fulfilled. Because why? Amos tells us that God does nothing without telling his servants, the prophets, first. Why? So that when it happens, we all know it's the Lord and no one can take credit for it. You're not going to find anywhere in the Old Testament that he's going to be changing his 10 commands to 9, that he's going to be saying that we no longer have to obey anything he says. It's never prophesied. The new covenant that people talk about that they think we're in, but we're really not in it, because it says in there, no one will have to teach the Lord. People are teaching about the Lord. It says specifically the laws will be in us, on our heart, not gone away. If there's no laws, how can they be on our heart? Sorry, I'm sidetracked. Lamentations 3, verse 22. Is it of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassion fails not? They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Why would God's mercies and compassions renew every morning? Well, because they're new every day, right? As each day comes, right? Whatever happened the day before is gone, new day. And what he's saying is day by day, they are new. Morning by morning. And he defines when that starts. Morning by morning. So we are covered by his faithfulness and his mercies from morning to morning to morning to morning to morning to morning, because that is the day, morning to morning to morning to morning. And there's tons of these that show you that he renews his stuff every morning, every day. I renew this daily in the morning. I renew this daily in the morning. It's super easy to see. Once you see it, you can't stop. Ezekiel. But then why do all the Jews in Israel keep a day even the evening? Because it's simple. Do some research in history. When they went to Babylon, Babylon kept the day evening to evening, and when they left Babylon, they kept those practices. They were Babylonianized. That's why. There are articles and things out there, if you can search the web and find it, that says straight up that the reckoning of a day changed after they came out of captivity. Well, if they're keeping evening to evening now, and that isn't what they kept before captivity, well then it was morning to morning. Ezekiel 46, verses 12 to 13. Now when the prince shall prepare a voluntary burnt offering or peace offerings, voluntary unto the Lord, one shall then open him the gate that looks towards the east, and he shall prepare his burnt offering and his peace offering, as he did on the Sabbath day, not night. Then he shall go forth, and after his going forth, one shall shut the gate. Thou shalt daily, every day, prepare a burnt offering unto the Lord of a lamb of the first year without blemish. You shall prepare it every morning. Why every morning? Why not every evening when the day changes? Because every morning brings in the new day. So you start your day by preparing that day's burnt offering. There's another one that was like the other. You can use the sacrifices to see when a day starts, because when it tells you that something has to be sacrificed every single day, well, when are they sacrificing it? Morning. That's when. because it's a new day. God is light, not darkness. To say that a day begins when everybody goes to sleep and when the lights go out, that's a renewal. Because you got to think about this, like a day starting as a renewal. We're not promised tomorrow. Well, when you're gonna, oh, thank you so much to bring me to the next day, Father, and then you go to sleep. No, Zephaniah 3, same place where you can find that feast to be kept in the land. Look at the CJB. Zephaniah 3. Sorry about that. Verse 5. The just Lord is in the midst thereof. He will not do iniquity. Every morning does he bring his judgment to light. He fails not. But the unjust knoweth no shame. Right? He brings his judgment every morning. Every day he judges. And he brings it every morning. Another pattern of when a day starts. If he's doing this daily and it's in the morning, there you go. Matthew 26, verse 20. This is they're preparing the Passover. And he tells them in verse 18, go into the city, find a man, let him know the master says, we're going to keep the Passover there. And so the disciples did as Yeshua had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. Verse 20. Now when the evening was come, he sat down with the 12. It's evening. Okay? How could they sit down to eat at evening, the Passover, which had to be eaten on the 14th, because now it's the 15th and they're late? No. Let's see if, one that maybe I do have it, so I don't want to say it. So again, it's evening, and it's not the next day yet. It's still the Passover, which we know is the 14th, and it's evening time, and the day hasn't changed. This one I'm just using to show that they're defining a time here, and it's evening, and the day's not changed yet. John 13, verse 27. All right, so same thing. They're doing the Passover, but now this is in the Gospel of John instead of Matthew. All right, so we know it's, when do they do the Passover? On the 14th at evening, not when the 15th starts, because that's what you'd say. You do your Passover the moment the 15th starts. That's what you'd say, because the 14th at evening really is the 15th starting, but they don't say that. So they're having their Passover, and in verse 27, it says, after the sop, him dipping the bread in and giving it to Judas, because he said he'd say who was going to betray him by giving whoever I dip my bread with. So after the sop, Satan entered into him, into Judas. Then said Yeshua unto him, what you have to do quickly. Okay? Now remember this. It's evening. What's after the Passover? The day of unleavened bread. It's a high Sabbath. No work, no buying, no selling. They would all know this. Now no man at the table knew for what intent he spoke unto him. Some of them thought, because Judas had the bag of money, that Yeshua said to him, buy those things that we have need of against the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. He then, having received the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. I love that. And it was night. So now we're past evening. It's night. Why in the world would any of these disciples in that room think that the Messiah, who knows that when the 15th starts, it's a day of unleavened bread, and it's a high Sabbath, would he tell Judas to go out and buy something? Why would that even be a thought in their head? Maybe give something to the poor, but it doesn't just say that. It says that maybe he asked them to go out and buy what we need. They would never have thought that if it was the 15th, because it's a high Sabbath. The only reason they're thinking this is because they all knew that the high Sabbath didn't start until the next morning. Bingo, right? And don't try to sit there and say, well, Messiah didn't care that it was the high Sabbath. Okay, even if Messiah didn't care, all those other people would have wondered what was going on. Who would have been open? Who would have been selling stuff? Although, if you keep reading and really do the study, you'll see that they were all doing it on the wrong day. And if you're like, why did Messiah do his Passover that day? And the next day they're saying that the Pharisees are doing the Passover and they wouldn't go into Pilate's place because they didn't want to be defiled so they could eat the Passover that night. Well, they were doing it on the wrong day. So if you're like me or a bunch of other people, you're like, what's going on here? And you'll find out that just like today, all different groups right in that same area were deciding on their own when they should do the Passover. There was 3, 4 of them, 5 of them. I don't know how many. But the history tells us that the Pharisees thought it was one day, the Sadducees thought it was another day. These groups, over time, decided to change the day they thought the Passover should be. Just like today. Deuteronomy 12 tells us he doesn't want people doing what's right in their own eyes. He wants it done according to his word and his instructions. So, there's a lot of verses in here that I gave. There's a ton more. I feel that Yah put it on me to give the ones that are extremely hard to go, no, I can make that work with evening to evening. Because trust me, I tried. I was evening to evening. I saw the morning to morning stuff, and I tried refuting it, and I got stuck. Because there was a point where I was like, seeing people give morning to morning and evening to evening, and I was able to just go, oh no, that's just telling us it's the morning time. It's not identifying when a day starts. And I was able to kind of use scripture to prove, no, that's not really proving that the evening starting the day. That's not really proving the morning. But these scriptures were, ones that I couldn't talk my way out of or use other scripture to show things. So praise Yah, because everything is in here. His word is living word. You pray for the truth, like it says in James, and you mean it and know he's going to give it to you. He'll give it to you. And it's not cherry picking scripture. Man, I just used a bunch of scripture to back these up. I used a bunch, and I even used ones that are used for evening to evening. Why would I do that if I was cherry picking? You don't trust me? I gave you all these scriptures. Yeah, do some research in history. Be a Berean. Question everything I'm saying. Do a search. Did the Hebrews, did the Jews, whatever you want to do, ever change how a day was reckoned? Is there any proof that how they reckoned a day starting changed? You'll find it. And that right there is just, wow. After they came out of Babylon, they reckoned a day different? Well, how are they doing it now? Well, that means it must have been different before. So, praise Yah as always. If you see anything here that I've said that you don't agree with, comment. I'll look into it. I hope this blesses somebody, but all glory to God. Have a good night, everyone. On the East Coast here, it's prep day, Sabbath tomorrow morning when the sun comes up.